How's it going, financial coaches? It's Pete here. Hey, I recently got a question about how long will it take me to study for the AFC. Now, I wanted to answer this, and this is just my opinion. This is not based on anything the AFCPE has put out there. They probably have some of their own estimates, but having taken it, and I can tell you a little bit about the situation that I was in when I took it, these are just kind of my best guesses. And so, I'm going to try to err on the conservative side here and maybe kind of give you some longer timelines, because I think it's pretty easy when you start studying that things get away from you, that you get busy with life and things like that, and it gets delayed out. So I think these are generally plenty of time, but depending on your situation, if work is unpredictable, kind of take that into account. Now, I also will say that studying for the AFC is just one part of getting the AFC designation. So it's kind of a requisite for going on and getting it in full, but you still have to get letters of recommendation, which I think after August are not going to be required. So if you're just starting it, it's probably not going to apply to you, but you would have to do that. Then you also have to actually have like 1,000 hours of practitioner work or practice work. So that's something that you're going to also have to get. I think there's a look back period of 2 years if you've done it for free or done something in this field. So that's going to help as well. But for a lot of people, just getting past the test is just going to make you an AFC candidate. And then once you get your 1,000 hours and any other requirements done, then you'll actually have your AFC. So don't take this as this is all it takes to get the AFC. It's just the first part. It's the biggest and the hardest part, in my opinion, but you still actually have to do a bunch of practicing. Now, I will say, if you are thinking about trying to get this and you're not sure how you're going to practice and not sure how you're going to get 1,000 hours of practice with clients, then this might not be for you, because you may pass the test and still never get the certification. Okay, so here are just my estimates. First of all, I love a good matrix as much as the next guy, so I put together one here, and I thought I would just kind of summarize it like this. So let's say you're thinking about taking it, and you're going to come in either with really good financial knowledge. Maybe you came from financial services, maybe you have a background in finance, maybe you've been studying it for a long time on your own, or you're going to come in with what I call low or weak financial knowledge. You maybe came from a different industry, maybe you've never worked in personal finance before. Even for a lot of people who are kind of enthusiasts about this, they don't understand some of the terminology and things like this, and it's all going to be new. So, if anything, I would kind of err on the side of low financial knowledge. Now, the other dimension to this is what kind of study options do you have? So in some cases, and I think for many of you, it might be a full-time job. You're going to still have to work, but you're going to study part-time after work. Okay, so I'm calling this part-time studying. For other people, maybe you're just getting into this business, you stay at home right now, you can study full-time. Maybe your job is going to allow you to do this. Maybe you work as a financial counselor for an agency or a nonprofit or something like that, and they're going to tell you to take some time and work on this designation. That's great too. I mean, I've seen that in corporate as well. We've certainly had that as well. So between strong financial knowledge, weak financial knowledge, between part-time studying and full-time studying, I think you're going to see kind of the correlation here. So the first thing I'm going to start with is, let's say you're part-time and you're low financial knowledge. I'm going to kind of put most people that are looking at financial coaching in the low financial knowledge bucket. A lot of people do not come from another discipline in financial services and come into this. It's kind of a tough business to make. And so if you're doing well in financial planning or investment management or banking or mortgage broker or whatever, then I don't know that you're kind of looking to pivot into this. You might be adding it on. So I'm going to put most people into the low financial bucket here. Now, if you're also working full-time and doing this part-time, and that's what I was doing, I was still doing my full-time job, doing financial coaching, building programs, building content, those types of things. And then I was studying for this because it wasn't necessarily required for my job. It was something that I wanted to have for my job. So kind of take that into account. I am estimating that you will need 3 weeks per book. And the reason I say that is that, at least when I took it, and I think it might be similar now, you actually get 3 books when you sign up for the AFC. Maybe more. There's a debt book, there's a financial counseling book, and then there's a personal finance book. The personal finance book is the biggest out of all 3 of them, and the debt book is probably the most dry out of the 3 of them. But why I'm saying this is I really think you probably, and this will depend, probably study for a few hours every other day. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you might study for a few hours. Maybe not Friday because you want to start the weekend. So maybe it's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or whatever. Oftentimes then you have a dinner or sports or whatever whatever, and so one of the days is lost. So then I'm kind of chalking up to 3 days with a few hours, so maybe 6, 7, 8, 9 hours a week to actually work on this. So I'm going to say give yourself 3 weeks to get through the books, because some of them are pretty long. The personal finance one in particular, some of them have a lot of detail, like the debt book. The financial counseling book is probably going to be the easiest one to get through. So just kind of pace yourself on that. And the other reason I space these out, even on the full time, is that sometimes your mind just gets clogged with this stuff. It's kind of being fed with the fire hose, and you just need a break. You just need a couple days away from it. So I do kind of take that into account. Then what I'm going to say here is that over the next few weeks, you're going to want to do the review. So they provide a lot of study materials. There are also lots of study materials out there. I would absolutely recommend downloading the Android app called the AFC flashcards or something like that. I think those are really helpful. There are some practice tests out there. Review those. And then I would say give yourself 3 weeks for the practice tests. I think there are some practice tests in the books, but there are also ones out there. And this is really where, most standardized tests, the practice test is going to give you the familiarity with the terminology, the types of questions. Things are going to start looking familiar for you. And what you really want to do is start having 80% or better on those practice tests. If you're consistently doing that, then I think you will feel like you're in pretty good shape for the test, and I think you will be in pretty good shape for the test. If you do the arithmetic on this, that means you probably need 15 weeks of part-time studying work to get through this. Now, let's say you're at home doing this on your own, you just want to plow through it, you're a business owner at this point, or maybe they have said, hey, take your time, do this. I've seen even people at my own company that have just been able to take the company time and do it. So that's something that you can do too. I would say, again, kind of have things here, 1.5 weeks per book. I actually think that you're probably going to get through the financial counseling book in a few days. You're probably going to get through the debt book in a few days, but it's the personal finance book that you're going to spend the most time on, not because it's going to take you a lot of time to read and flip the pages, but you're probably going to be asking and Googling a lot of stuff because it might be the first time you've heard some of the terminology. So that, even though it's 1.5 weeks per book, I really think you're probably going to do most of the work on the debt book, and then the lion's share of the work on the personal finance book. But overall, I think you're going to need the 4.5 weeks there. And then I would give yourself 1 week for review, kind of put it all together here. Spend a couple weeks taking the practice test. Again, this is not something you're going to want to do all day. Kind of pace yourself. I would take a practice test in the morning, practice test in the afternoon, continue to space that out, look at the questions that you're missing, kind of go back to the material, retake the practice test, see how you do. And again, this is about half of the full-time work, about 7.5 weeks, maybe almost a couple months to kind of get through this. And then really most of this is kind of loading you up with the financial knowledge, the personal finance knowledge. That's where it's going to feel the heaviest for you. All right, so let's say you have strong knowledge and you're doing this part-time. And this was the category that I was in here. I would say 2 weeks per book. And again, I think you're going to soar through the counseling book and even the debt book to some degree. It's the personal finance book that you're really going to go through and do most of your highlighting there. So give yourself 6 weeks on this. Now, I would say that this is probably going to vary by the type of job you have. For me, sometimes it was unpredictable. Sometimes I had to be on the road for a few days. Sometimes we had to work late hours. Sometimes it was really light during the week and I could do some stuff while I was in the office too. It really depends. But if you have kind of a job that varies or is unpredictable, you might want to extend this out a little bit here. So 2 weeks per book. Then give yourself 2 weeks to review. Again, kind of going through the material, going through the flashcards, trying to remember the formulas, trying to remember the keywords, the vocabulary, those types of things. Just give yourself time to burn it in and kind of review them. A few times, just going through the flashcards, just getting familiar with the terms, then really learning those definitions. Then give yourself 2 weeks for the practice test. Again, this is going to be a situation where you might only take one practice test a day, and so you might only take it 3 times that week, and then take 3 more the next week and see how you're doing. Are you getting consistent on that? And again, even if you're coming in with pretty strong financial knowledge, that's not necessarily all you need to pass the test. You really got to know the knowledge that they want you to know in those books. So even though a lot of that personal finance book will look familiar to you, and it's going to just resonate and it's going to be review in a lot of cases, it's really some of the other stuff that you're going to have to really kind of memorize. So I'd say 10 weeks here. I'd say 2 strong months on it, right? So let's say you have strong knowledge and you could do this full time. I'd give yourself a week per book. I actually think you're only going to need a week for the first 2 books, and then you're going to need a week plus on the personal finance book. The debt book, it depends on how much you read. The debt book is a lot of repeat because there's a lot of same tactics, whether you're dealing with credit card debt, personal debt, unsecured debt, secured debt, auto loan, some of that stuff. So in some of the cases, you can start flipping through it. But if it's all new to you and you're really fastidious about all the details, you might spend a full week on that book. So, I'd give yourself 3 weeks to get through the 3 books. Then give yourself a week for review. Again, contextualizing it, going back on the stuff that now you're looking at some of the questions and you're saying, hey, where was that? I don't remember it. Give yourself a week on the practice test. And I think this is a situation, like I said, 1 week, 5 working days, I would say you should be able to do 10 practice tests in that time period. So you're looking at 5 weeks. This is the shortest of them all, right? So if you're coming in with a strong financial background and you have full time to commit to it, I think you're going to need a month plus on it. And it's not because you're not capable or you don't have enough information or knowledge to be a good financial coach even at this point, but they're testing you specifically on the information in the book. They're testing you on what is the acceptable percentage of monthly income you can spend on rent. What is the acceptable amount of monthly income that you can spend on a new car purchase? Some of those things. So it's not just guidelines and generalities. There is some specific math that you have to remember those formulas when you go into it. So it's really important that you kind of spend the time. So again, I would say that I think that these are appropriate, but again, skew them based on how you think you feel. I have heard some people will study part-time for 6 months on this, and I can see it. Let's say you haven't been in the counseling or coaching world. You haven't been in the, kind of the financial world, right? You're kind of a blank slate. You're starting from scratch. A lot of this can seem like new information, and it can be really overwhelming, so it's a little hard. It's a little bit difficult for me because I've spent my career in it. And so some of this was very familiar, and yet I did spend a lot of time on it, because you have to come up with those right answers. But it's one of those things where, if anything, it's kind of like firewood, collect what you need or collect what you think you need and then triple it because it's going to burn faster than you think. So the reason I bring this up and the reason I think that this is important is because it depends on when you schedule your tests. So for me, I was kind of under a deadline because I actually signed up for one of the in-person review sessions. So I sat in a classroom for a day and a half with some of the people from the AFCPE, and they kind of went through their formal review. I thought that was really helpful, not because it gave me a lot of information, but it gave me more confidence after doing all of these things that I was going to pass that test. As I was sitting in there, able to answer the questions that they were putting out, able to kind of front run the concepts they were trying to teach the class. A lot of the people in the class thought that it was the first time they'd ever heard of it. Now, I don't know if sometimes some of these concepts were kind of extrapolated from the reading material, but in most of these cases, for me, I thought it was in the material and it was just review. But that helped me not only stay on pace, but it also just helped me have confidence going into that test as well. And I think I got a 95% of the test. I've got the output somewhere, so I did reasonably well on it. I think you need a 75% to pass. So I'm not sure exactly what the threshold is right now, but if you want to just hold yourself to a schedule, you can sign up for that in-person review session, and you have a hard deadline. For a lot of people, I think you're kind of studying as you go. You have some options for like online Zoom call based reviews and refreshers or whatever. Those might be really valuable to you. And I think then you can just sign up for the test at a testing center at your convenience. So you might not be driven by a deadline. So to be honest, I don't know. I do like having a formal deadline. Sometimes it just kind of keeps us on a schedule. But in this case, I think you might want to just get into it before you set up a deadline because, again, I think there's so much variability in this. There's so much information that it's a little hard to kind of narrow it in. So what I might do is just kind of get through all the reading material. And once you do that, say, all right, between the practice tests, the reviews, I only want to give myself 3 more weeks or 2 more weeks. So I want to schedule my test at that point, but get through the material first. Take a practice test, at least see how you fare on those. I will tell you that, like I said, I think I got a 95 on the final test. I was scoring kind of low 90s on the practice exams pretty regularly. So it was a pretty good estimate of what I was going to, or what I did get on the test. So I would definitely use those as a gauge. If you're getting 80% solidly on those, I think you're going to pass. I think it's only 75%. That's all you need to pass, or, whatever the threshold is. Don't quote me on that. But you definitely want to be consistently hitting a number on those practice tests before you kind of pull the trigger. That's my recommendation on it. So hopefully that helps you prepare for taking the AFC exam. Again, this is just the first part of it, but it's a good certification and a really reputable organization. So it's one I would highly recommend. I think it's worth going for. That's it. See you later.